Hey there, golf lovers. Looking to step up your game? Let me tell you about Mollybox, the ultimate golf subscription box. Every month, Mollybox sends you a box packed with premium golf gear, accessories, and stylish apparel, all delivered right to your door. Imagine getting top-tier apparel and more, all handpicked just for you. With Mollybox, you'll stay ahead of the game and boost your performance. It's like having a personal caddy in a box. So why wait? Join the Mollybox family today. Head over to mollybox.com and use your limited time promo code ROGUE25, ROGUE, ROGUE 25 for 25% off your first box. That's mollybox.com.
Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
This is a Rogue Media Network podcast. Central Texas Life with Ann Harder presents Central Texas Events.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Central Texas Events, and I am just thrilled to welcome Dr. Kenneth Hafertepe to, am I saying that right?
Pretty darn close.
Pretty well. Say it, Dan, so I know.
It's Dr. Kenneth Hafertepe.
Hafertepe, but we don't say the E at the end.
That's right. Germans in
Hafertepe.
Texas went English, and so silent E making
Okay. So,
Hafertepe.
but the Germans would.
Yeah, it's probably Hafertepe back in Germany.
Okay. Anyway, it's great to have you. And first of all, the reason I had wanted to visit with you is because you are a renowned expert on Abner Cook. Who was the designer of the Governor's Mansion and the Neil Cochran House, which is in Austin, Texas, very near and dear to my heart, and two wonderful old houses.
Yes, some of the oldest in Austin.
Right, and so Abner Cook, he kind of made quite a name for himself. And
He did. Of course, I helped by writing a book about him. But
I guess that's true.
yeah, he was really, I mean, even before I started on the project, he was the kind of figure that if someone came upon an old house in Austin, oh, it must be an Abner Cook. If it had Greek columns or if it had an X and stick balustrade, which were trademarks of his. But people can copy your trademarks once it's out in the world. So part of that book was trying to ascertain what was really Abner Cook and what was Abner Cook wannabe or the like. So fortunately, I had a small grant from the Heritage Society of Austin and a little work from the Texas Historical Commission doing a revision to all of the Abner Cook National Register of Historic Places nominations, because most of his flew onto the National Register in like the first year or two because they were among the obvious ones for Texas. And then the other important thing was that I was hired by the National Society of Colonial Dames, who own the Neil Cochran House. And so I was the resident manager there for 3 years back in the late 80s. And so I was working on a biography of Abner Cook living in one of his finest houses. So that was pretty cool.
That is wonderful. I'm glad to know that history.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Still go back there from time to time to do various lectures on various subjects. But yeah, it's a house with a fond spot in my heart.
Yeah, well, mine too. And thank you for your service to the Colonial Dames and in doing that. But the reason we're here today is because you have a new book.
Yeah, something that's not 30 years old.
And it's something, again, when you had the first book come out, I wanted to interview you about that. Haven't had a chance to do that until just this moment, because you have a new one, and it's More Historic Homes of Waco, Texas.
It is indeed.
And
it's the third volume of my Waco trilogy.
Okay, and so you're not going to do any more?
There are other things on the horizon, so I'm taking a Waco break, and so moving on to working on gravestone makers Texas.
Interesting.
And so,
Interesting.
so that's on the front burner right now. But there are other
That's good.
projects too. But.
Well, you are going to be signing this book. You're going to have
Yes.
an event. It's coming up on June 27th, next Thursday evening.
Exactly right.
And it will be from 6 to 7:30 at the Mayburn in the theater there. So if folks come, will they need to buy a ticket to come in, or they just say they're coming to the book signing?
Everybody just come and we'll have a good time. And then if you're inspired, you can buy a copy of the book.
Well, I gotta have this. You have just now handed this to me, and I'm like, I know that house. I know that. That's B. and Philip Sanger's house. I mean,
Yeah.
because the thing about old houses, it's never your house until you move out of it.
Right.
And so
yeah.
many years ago they moved to Austin, but it's still B. and Philip's house. But originally it was
Right.
built by the Kestners,
Yes.
right there on Austin Avenue.
Yeah, and actually, the lower one's the Kestner house, and immediately above it, the Tudor Revival one was the Wilton Lanning house. And it was actually Wilton Lanning Sr., whose son, Little Wilton
I was
Jr.,
going to say, we know
became
Wilton
the founder of the Dr. Pepper Museum. And in fact,
yeah.
I had the chance to talk with Wilton about that house and his parents and their story. I guess it was maybe a couple of months before he passed away. And he was such a delightful person and just great to be able to talk. And basically, he was there till like age 9 or 10. And then the World War II broke out. So his dad went off to fight. Mom moved back in with her family. And they were Spencers. So a lot of this gets into the genealogy and what, old Waco families, who married who.
So much.
Yeah. So the thing that I like about these is that, we drive by these houses all the time.
Well, I lived across the street from this house for 18 years. So Austin Heights is what they call it, but then Kessel Heights right behind it. So many of these homes I'm so very familiar with.
Yeah. And so now you get to hear the stories behind them
I
and
love
things of that nature. So yeah, it's been fun. There are other Waco houses out there that are quite beautiful that are not in these books, but the ones that tended to go in either had a very juicy story or interesting people who lived in it, or I was able to find out who the architect was. And so there was back in the olden days in Waco, like 2000, there was a tendency that if it was an old colonial revival house, that must be Milton Scott. And that's true for some of them, but it ain't for all of them.
Not for all of them.
And my friend Stephen Fox in Houston pointed out to me that the Metropolitan Research Center at the Houston Public Library had a contractors magazine from the 1920s and 30s, which had upcoming building projects all across Texas, and who got the contracts to design buildings or to construct them. And so there was just tons of information about Waco and who the designers were. So the Historic Homes of Waco, the first volume, was kind of a coming out party for Birch D. Easterwood, who's probably better known because he designed Patton F. Hall and a lot of the Baylor dormitories, and also ended up designing Tidwell Bible Building. But it turns out that he was a very prolific architect here in the 1920s and 1930s. He ended up moving to Fort Worth during World War II. And so, part of the thing that drives me, I guess, is wanting credit to go where credit is due. And so if if an obscure architect designed it, well, doggone it, I think we need to let people know. There's a house, the Guggenheim Troutschuld house, which is in the new book. And from the contractor's journal, I found out that it was designed by a young guy, maybe 21 years old, named Wolford Bogue, who was from Fort Worth. There's almost nothing known about this guy, but now we know that he designed a house that was built for the Guggenheim family, but for years and years was owned by the Troutschulds of the Troutschuld Lumber Company.
Right.
So, I find it really interesting just trying to track, where designers intersect with homeowners, and my feeling about a lot of historic home tours is that when we do tours of houses, we get down to what's in the house. It's like, here's, come into this room, here's the sofa, or here's the painting. But the thing that we know the best, and those may not be things owned by the original family, but they left this house for us.
Right.
So there's just all of these little decisions that they had to make the house different than other ones.
Enough that this brings to mind, because I am very familiar with this house right here, the Kestner house. I think the Kestners, my friends who bought it, they were the second people to live in it. And so when my friend wanted to pull the carpet up in the dining room, it was hand-done parquet floors that had never been finished.
Wow.
Mrs. Kestner had put this rug down on it from the get-go. It was fabulous. It was a fabulous find. And it was one of these old houses that had servant quarters, and the entrance was to the back side to the room. So they did some remodeling.
Yeah,
to bring it to a stage that a modern family wanted to, and I'm talking 35 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And houses are always getting updated.
Right.
That comes with the territory. I was really interested in the first Historic Homes book. I was able to find out who was living in the servants' quarters. And so as you read through both volumes, but especially Volume 1, there are probably more high-end homes in Volume 1, and there are more sort of middle class and maybe and a few working class homes in this volume. But I wanted to let people know who was doing the work, who was doing the yard work, who was cooking the dinner and things of that. And it's interesting, a lot of times they had trouble filling those servants' quarters. They thought it was going to be a great money saver for them. And I think a lot of folks preferred to live in neighborhoods with their friends and families.
Right.
I think they felt kind of isolated in Castle Heights, or the only black person on the block, or things of that nature. So just to think about those, it's something that a lot of times, if you're so busy talking about beautiful colonial revival house, you don't think about how it worked. And so, but back on your point about finding the floors underneath, I bought my house, which is in Volume 1 too, in 2000, and there was very dirty white shag carpet in all of the front rooms. And on pulling up those shag carpets, it turns out that there were beautiful golden oak floors.
Oh, yeah.
And so had a local craftsman come because it had gotten stained by a mat. But he took like 1/8 of an inch off the top, and it really took it back to the original golden
and those
oak.
old floors, they were really thick, so you could just keep sanding until you got a beautiful
And he
form.
told me that those oak floors were of a quality, because this is a 1923 house, these were of a quality that you cannot get today.
Right.
So, and they had been covered up with shag carpet. And actually 9 years later, redoing the kitchen, which had linoleum, and the breakfast room had linoleum as well. There were like 3 layers of linoleum. You're sort of doing linoleum archaeology, digging down.
But those antique patterns are becoming very in vogue
now.
now.
Very, very trendy. But the interesting thing was, when I got to the last linoleum level, or when the contractor did, it turns out there was golden oak underneath that too in the breakfast room.
There you go.
So that was a little crazy. But so sometimes it's a challenge knowing what the house originally had. But back on the Kestner house, a colleague shared the blueprints for that house, and so not only do we know, and those blueprints say what the original room names were and the arrangement of the space. And
what was the name of that entry room then? I've just got to ask, because you walk in and it was just this room. There was no entry.
Yeah.
Like a vestibule or something that you just walked in, you were in this room. And she didn't really know how to use that room.
It's a little unusual. It's it's been a
had a fireplace.
It's been a couple of years since I wrote that entry, but I will say that I think that it was kind of a direct entry, which you sort of get with bungalows from the earlier period. And so I'll have to look that up. But a friend of mine who did have the blueprints, that was really cool, and that was also, those blueprints told us who the architect of the house was, and that was T. Brooks Pearson, who had been a partner of Milton W. Scott for a couple of years. So still lots of interesting little tidbits coming out that no one had ever really cared about.
I have to say, it was built like Fort Knox. I
Yeah.
mean, it truly was.
Yeah.
And it had a downstairs basement with a sump pump that they were always a little concerned about water getting in. But it was always understood in the neighborhood that if there was a bad thunderstorm, we were to go
Good
across the
place to
street
go.
to the Sanger's house.
Yeah, and that was a drive-in
Right, down.
garage too. So,
Yes. Oh, yeah.
which was also something just from the 30s. So yeah, a lot of houses like that. Not the largest house in Castle Heights, but a rich story. And it was the Kestners were a Jewish family, and so I tried to keep track of, who are the Baptists, who are the Methodists, who are the Catholics, who's Jewish, and the like, because Waco is actually, a religiously diverse city, and
Yes,
so
it is.
it's good to see that, and to very few architectural histories talk a lot about black neighborhoods and black houses, black-owned houses,
Right.
and so I felt very strongly that I needed to do that in Volume 1, and it was kind of a challenge because, black people were still dealing with the legacy of Jim Crow, and, it was a challenge, but and there was so much urban renewal in the larger black neighborhoods.
And many of those just were
And I even tried,
done away
I
with.
thought, I'm going to look up the names of all of the black ministers in Waco in, say, 1925, and that'll say where they lived. And so, by golly, it did say where they lived, and almost all of those were demolished.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, skunked out on that one. But just in driving around the neighborhood around Paul Quinn and on Elm, that was a significant black neighborhood as well, and faculty from Paul Quinn and A.J. Moore High School and the like. And so it turned out that there were some really rich stories of, black people, working against all the challenges and, creating beautiful houses. So there's some good examples of that in this new book as well. But that had to be something intentional. It's very easy just to sort of fall back on, the prettiest houses in the prettiest neighborhoods. But, even smaller houses with less decorations are telling stories too. And so it's just a way of getting to know, someone like a black carpenter named Horace Randall. His house is still there. And at the end of Elm. In fact, we had an exhibit at the Mayborn on At Home in Waco. And that house was one of the houses that we had. Basically, we enlarged the photos from the book, and Trey Crumpton and his crew from the Mayborn did a great job. But one of my friends saw a black lady talking about that house and telling her what looked to be her grandson. I think that's right, a grandson. And my Mayborn colleague stopped and said, "Oh, is that house? That was my grandparents' house when I was growing up. I spent so many summers on that porch." And it's like, this is so beautiful. This is seeing, and I've gotten emails from people about, my grandparents are in your book. I had no idea that they lived there. And so that's kind of cool that history is more than presidents and popes and, college professors or whatever, that, ordinary people have stories to tell as well. And so that's one of the things that I was trying to get to.
What this Volume 3, More Historic Homes of Waco, Texas, is doing. And you'll be doing a talk, I presume, on the 27th, telling folks more about these homes. And for me, it has been a walk down memory lane, just looking just at the pictures on the book. I'm like, oh no, well that one's on Concord, and these houses that I know so well, having grown up in Waco as a little girl driving through Castle Heights and thinking they were like fairy tale houses.
Yeah.
And here you've highlighted these beautiful fairy tale houses.
Yeah, sometimes friends, I was at church one day and my friend Chet Shield said, that house at Concord and 31st, that would be an interesting one for you to write. And I said, okay, Chet, check it out. And by golly, it had a very interesting story, and ends up on the dust jacket of the book. So, that was sort of a friend request of something that would be good to have in the book.
It is awesome. I am looking so forward to the event. Certainly plan to be there.
Great.
And and I got to get me an autographed copy of this book. That's for sure.
I will be warming up my signing hand.
That's right.
And hopefully I'll have writer's cramp by the end.
Cramp by the end of it, because these homes are. And some businesses too, or are they just homes?
Well, Volume 2 is historic buildings, and that has churches and businesses, including the Dr. Pepper Museum, of course, and universities and Waco High, and just even
many of these things you can see from this window.
I know, this is quite remarkable.
It's really fun here in the Alico building.
The Alico, and it's interesting that the volumes intertwine, because you might see a person's house in Volume 1, and their business that allowed them to build a nice house like that is in Volume 2. Or
you're right. There's a connectivity there.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I just, I'm just so happy that we've had a chance to sit and talk about this, and we had a reason for doing that because of this great book, More Historic Homes of Waco, Texas.
It's been fun. Thank you for asking me.
Again, write down this date. It's going to be Thursday, June 27th. 6 to 7:30 at the Mabern Museum, and you can see those beautiful mammoths if you haven't driven by yet.
The remarkable sculptures.
It's another amazing building. Yeah. But thank you, Kenneth, for all that you've done to document this this wonderful aspect of Waco history.
I thought it was going to be one book, but
well, there's just so much, and you're so brilliant and so talented at doing this, and I appreciate your time so much. All right. Thank you for being with us, too, and we'll see you next time on Central Texas Events. Bye-bye.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.
Hey there, golf lovers. Looking to step up your game? Let me tell you about Mollybox, the ultimate golf subscription box. Every month, Mollybox sends you a box packed with premium golf gear, accessories, and stylish apparel, all delivered right to your door. Imagine getting top-tier apparel and more, all handpicked just for you. With Mollybox, you'll stay ahead of the game and boost your performance. It's like having a personal caddy in a box. So why wait? Join the Mollybox family today. Head over to mollybox.com and use your limited time promo code ROGUE25, ROGUE, ROGUE 25 for 25% off your first box. That's mollybox.com.